My girlfriend of 6 years wrote me a contract that let her date other people, while I kept paying the bills and stayed loyal in case she wanted to come back. I signed nothing. I just quietly stopped being her safety net. 3 months later, she found out exactly what that cost her. I'm Marcus. I'm 33. And this is the story of how a woman I loved for 6 straight years tried to write the rules for both our lives, and how 3 quiet weeks turned her little intermission into the biggest miscalculation she'd ever made. Let me back up first, because you need to understand what 6 years actually looked like before that night, or none of what comes next is going to land the way it should. 6 years is not some fling that quietly ran out of steam. 6 years is your name on someone's insurance paperwork. It's a rescue dog named Biscuit, who somehow ends up sleeping on your side of the bed, but gets called our dog anyway. It's driving 4 hours through the night because her father is going into surgery, and you don't even think twice about it. You just grab your keys. It's her parents introducing you as our son before they even get to boyfriend. 6 years is architecture, something you build slowly, brick by brick, without ever really noticing how tall it's gotten. And on a random Tuesday night, with absolutely no warning, Elena decided she wanted to start renovating that whole structure, without bothering to pull a permit. She didn't call it a breakup. She was very careful about that. She called it an intermission, like our relationship was some kind of stage play, and she just needed a few minutes in the lobby to stretch her legs before Act 2. The page she slid across the table had 3 sections, typed, formatted, actual bullet points, like she'd sat down and drafted this in advance, instead of just talking to me like a person. Section 1, she called it personal growth time. Translation, she wanted to date other people, openly. No labels, no guilt attached. Section 2 was labeled continuity. That one meant I'd keep paying my half of everything, because, and I'm quoting her here, destabilizing the household wouldn't be fair to either of us. And then there was Section 3, the line that actually made my chest go tight for a second. It said that I agreed to remain emotionally available and would not pursue any other romantic or physical relationships during this period in order to preserve the possibility of us getting back together. I read that line twice, honestly, just to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding the tone of it. I wasn't. I looked up at her and said, "So basically, I hold the door open for you, and you get to go see what's on the other side of it." She said that wasn't fair, that this was about her finding clarity. I told her that sounded like clarity for her, and limbo for me. Here's the part that should have been my first warning sign, and honestly, I almost missed it completely. I said okay. Just that. Okay. And Elena actually smiled when I said it. She thought that word meant I was agreeing to her terms. What it actually meant was, okay, now I understand exactly what kind of person I'm dealing with. And I am absolutely not going to be the only one keeping my end of this arrangement. That night, after she went to bed feeling pretty satisfied with how the conversation had gone, I sat on the living room floor with Biscuit's head resting on my knee, and I started making a list. Not a revenge list, nothing dramatic like that, just a reality list. Every bill that was in my name, every account she still had access to, every single dollar I'd quietly sent her during those 4 months she was between jobs, back when I never once called it a loan, because I loved her, and love wasn't supposed to come with an invoice attached. I wrote all of it down. Something in my gut already knew I was going to need that list eventually. My brother Dev called me the next morning. I told him everything, start to finish. He went quiet, and Dev is never quiet. Not until I got to that 3rd section of her little agreement. He said, "She wrote you an actual contract, gave herself every right in it, and you every single obligation. That's not a pause, Marcus. That's a retainer." I told him I knew. He said, "Do you really? Because you told her okay." I said okay to understanding exactly who she is, not okay to the deal itself. There was a long pause on his end. Then he said, "Good, because I already don't like where this is heading for her." He had absolutely no idea how right he was going to turn out to be. 3 weeks into this so-called intermission, Elena was living exactly the way you'd probably expect. Late nights out, new names lighting up her phone at strange hours. There was a guy named Colton, who apparently, and again, I'm quoting her directly, just got her sense of humor, in a way most people didn't. She volunteered that information to my face, completely unprompted. I never asked about Colton, not once. She just kept bringing him up on her own, testing the wound. waiting for some crack in my expression she could point to and use as proof that deep down, I still cared more than I was letting on. Here's what she didn't see, mostly because by that point she'd stopped actually looking. I wasn't sitting home crying into a pillow somewhere. I was quietly and methodically disconnecting every single wire that had made me her safety net for the last 6 years. I moved my direct deposit over to a brand new account. I called the credit card company and lowered the limit on the card she used for what she called emergencies, a card that had somehow developed a very specific and consistent pattern of dinners for two. I didn't cancel anything outright. Not yet. I wanted a paper trail, not a scene. Because deep down, I already knew that when this eventually ended, Elena was going to tell people I'd been cold, and she'd just been confused. And I was not going to let her tell that story without a receipt sitting behind every single line of it. The last loose thread was our apartment lease. Renewal was 6 weeks out, and she'd already started saying things like, "We'll figure that out later," in that breezy tone people use right before they quietly stop including you in whatever later actually means. So I stopped waiting around for her to get to it. I contacted the leasing office myself and requested the renewal paperwork sent directly to me, a full week before she'd even thought to ask. And that's when I found it. Not the contract she'd written for me, the one she'd written for Colton. I want to be clear, I wasn't snooping. I know how that sounds, but I need you to understand the actual sequence of events. I'd asked the leasing office to email me the terms directly. Elena's laptop happened to be sitting open on the kitchen counter, and a new message was syncing in real time, right in front of me. I wasn't hunting for anything, but when your own name shows up in a sentence you were never supposed to read, you don't exactly keep walking past it. The email wasn't addressed to me, it was addressed to Colton. The subject line said, "Just so we're clear," followed by a little laughing emoji. Like the whole thing was some kind of joke, she'd written him almost the exact same structure she'd handed me. Except this time, I wasn't the one holding the pen, I was the subject matter. Section 1. She needed to detach slowly so it wouldn't look sudden to her family. Section 2. Marcus is stable. He won't do anything drastic. He'll keep covering the lease and the bills while I get my head straight. And then Section 3. The sentence that actually rearranged something permanent inside my chest. She'd written that I was predictable. And that, honestly, that was the safest part of this whole situation. Predictable. Safe. Like I was some kind of savings account she was letting quietly mature in the background, while she went out shopping with the interest. I didn't slam the laptop shut. I didn't storm into the bedroom and confront her right then. I did something a lot calmer, and honestly, a lot more dangerous for her in the long run. I forwarded that email to myself, closed the laptop exactly the way I'd found it, and went and sat outside on the porch with Biscuit until my hands finally stopped shaking. The next morning, I called the leasing office and declined the renewal outright. It took maybe 5 minutes. No drama, no scene. I'd still be responsible through the end of our current term. Nothing past that. That was fine with me. Better than fine. I wasn't trying to put her out on the street. I was simply refusing to co-sign a future she'd already promised to somebody else, in an email with a laughing emoji next to my name. Then I sent Elena one single message, short, clean, no accusations attached to it. I told her I'd seen the email to Colton about the lease, that I wouldn't be renewing, that I'd cover my share through the current term and nothing beyond that, and that anything else she needed to say to me should go in writing from that point forward. She called me 9 times back to back. I let every single call ring out completely. 2 hours later, she was standing at the door, mascara already smudged, her voice already shaking in that particular register she used whenever she needed me to cave. She asked if I'd gone through her laptop. I told her she'd left it open, and it only took one line for me to understand exactly what I was looking at. She said I was twisting it, that she was only trying to protect me from a hard conversation. I told her she was protecting herself from an inconvenient one. There's a real difference between those two things. One of them you do for someone you love. The other you do to them. She reached for the old script after that. The tears, the "I never meant to hurt you," the "you're the only stable thing I have," and for the first time in 6 years, I watched myself simply not reach out to catch her. I just stood there and watched her fall straight into her own sentence, and land in it completely alone. I told her I'd stopped being her safety net 3 weeks earlier. She just hadn't bothered to check. She tried bringing up Biscuit next. Then everything we built together. I told her calmly that everything we'd built was never supposed to be collateral in somebody else's exit plan. Then I set her own printed agreement down on the counter between us. I told her she'd written the terms herself. I was just finally reading them the way they'd actually been written all along. She got freedom. I got the consequences. That wasn't a pause. That was an exit, with my signature still sitting on the lease. I moved out over the following 2 weeks. No screaming matches, no boxes getting thrown down a hallway for dramatic effect, just receipts. Every single dollar accounted for. Not because I wanted a war, because I wanted the truth to be able to stand up on its own, without me having to defend it in some conversation for the rest of my life. Colton didn't stick around much longer, as it turns out. I heard through a mutual friend that once Elena's predictable backup plan disappeared, the actual weight of an adult relationship, the bills, the logistics, the simple act of staying, landed squarely on his shoulders instead. Apparently the excitement was only ever fun when somebody else was quietly footing the stability underneath it. I honestly don't know what version of this Elena tells people these days. I heard secondhand that in her telling, I abandoned her completely out of nowhere. I don't bother correcting it anymore. I don't need an audience for this. I have an inbox full of dates, screenshots, and one email with a laughing emoji that says everything I'd ever needed to say without me having to speak a single word. For a while, I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. 3 months after I handed her back that spare key, Elena reached out again. Not a call this time. A message. Casual on the surface. The kind of thing you send when you're testing whether a door is really locked or just closed. She said she'd run into a mutual friend who mentioned I'd been seeing someone. She said it lightly, like she was just making conversation, but the real question was sitting right underneath it. She wanted to know if it was serious. I almost didn't answer at all. Then I decided she'd earned the truth. Plainly. Once. And never again. I told her yes, it was serious. Her name was Ruby. I told her Ruby didn't know the full story yet, and probably never would, because there wasn't anything left to explain. I wasn't hiding from a past. I was just living a life that had nothing left to do with her. She went quiet for a long time after that. Then she wrote back one line. That was fast, for someone who told me he needed stability, not chaos. That's when I understood she still hadn't grasped what actually happened between us. Not even 3 months later. So I told her plainly. I said, I never needed you to disappear so I could move on, Elena. I just needed you to stop expecting me to stand still while you decided whether I was worth keeping. You didn't lose me to Ruby. You lost me the day you wrote a contract that let you leave the door open and asked me to guard it from the outside. She didn't respond to that one. Not right away. I saw her in person exactly once after that, and I wasn't expecting to. Ruby and I had gone to pick up moving boxes from a storage place. The same one, as it turned out, Elena and I used to share. I was carrying a stack of flattened boxes across the lot when I heard her voice say my name. She was standing by her car, alone, holding her phone like she'd been about to call someone and had forgotten why. She looked at the boxes in my arms, then at Ruby, a few steps behind me, laughing at something on her phone, completely unaware of who she was standing near. Elena's eyes moved from her to me and back again, and I watched the exact moment the second-hand version of the story she'd built in her head collided with the real one standing in front of her. She'd heard I was seeing someone. Hearing it and watching it are not the same thing. She said, so this is her. I said, this is Ruby, yeah. She's pretty, Elena said, in a voice that was trying very hard to sound unbothered, and not quite landing it. I didn't say anything to that. There wasn't a version of an answer that would have been kind to either of them. Elena looked back at me and said, I didn't think you'd actually move on this fast. I told her I hadn't moved on fast. I'd moved on completely. And there's a difference. Fast implies I was running from something. I wasn't running. I was just done standing still. She opened her mouth like she had one more line loaded. One more version of the story, where I was the cold one, and she was the confused one. Then she looked at Ruby again, at the easy, unguarded way she was laughing at her phone, at something as simple as two people who trusted each other enough to not need a printed contract between them. And whatever Elena had been about to say, she let it go instead. She said, quietly, I hope you're happy. I told her I was. Then I picked up the boxes, said it was good seeing her, and walked back to the car, where Ruby asked who that was. I told her the truth. An old chapter. Closed now. I didn't look back to see Elena's face. I didn't need to. For 6 years, I'd spent so much energy reading her expressions, trying to find the right temperature of response to keep her comfortable, that I'd forgotten what it felt like to just walk away and not check. Biscuit sleeps on both sides of the bed now, next to Ruby, who never once needed a printed agreement to prove she meant what she said. Elena wanted a safety net with no strings attached, someone stable enough to return to whenever the exploring got uncomfortable. What she actually taught me is that the moment you stop waiting for someone to choose you, you finally become impossible to keep.